While you were walking the wasteland one day, you saw something out of this world. You've never seen a flying object like it in real life. Even pre-war Boston had nothing that looked like that. So you go to investigate and find a rabbit hole that implicates some of the biggest corporations in America with the end of the world. Welcome back, everybody. Today we'll be digging into everything Zetan and extraterrestrial in the Fallout universe. So grab your Mothman blanket, get cozy, and let's dive back into the wastelands of Fallout. And finally, prove that aliens caused everything. Aliens have been present in Fallout since the very first game. While out in the wasteland, the Vault Dweller could stumble upon a crashed ship, like nothing they had seen before, with two skeletons lying in the sand outside. These bone aliens, as they're known, had small bodies and rather impressively large craniums, which definitely brings to mind the old stories of the visits people have had from the Greys in our own world. A small, almost fragile body with a large head, black eyes, and a flying saucer, it ticks off all the boxes. The Greys have been said to have a connection with Area 51, although, depending on which conspiracy theory you listen to, they either work together to control the human race, or have been captured there. The note on the ship definitely indicates the latter. It says, property of Area 51, return if found. Looks like these aliens managed to escape before crash landing in the desert alone on an alien planet. The Vault Dweller can then loot them, obtaining the alien blaster, and more surprisingly, the fuzzy painting. Taking a closer look at what painting a pair of aliens would be trying to escape with, it's a genuine Velvis. An image of a singer, obviously very old. The image has a felt coating that is still in good condition. The image on this is very clearly Elvis Presley. And for those of you like me who might be wondering why one of the only items they'd be escaping with would be a picture of Elvis, turns out he's not just the king of rock and roll on our planet. Elvis had a particular interest in aliens, collecting books about both them and the paranormal due to the fact that he was allegedly visited multiple times over his life by aliens. When he was born, his father reported seeing a blue light over their house. At 8, he communicated telepathically with aliens, being shown a vision of himself on stage, all in white. He even saw UFOs over the desert himself, leading some to speculate whether he had a special connection with aliens, and if he was just abducted rather than dying. Taking this back to Fallout, maybe these bodies were from before the war, and they were looking for Elvis. The alien blaster is the only one you can loot in the original Fallout, and unlike later games when you find it, it actually uses energy cells as ammunition instead of alien power cells. In Fallout 4, this is a modification we can do ourselves, so it most likely was done at Area 51. Maybe that's why the ship crashed. They'd been researching it, taking it apart and putting it back together with human technology, and it just didn't work as well anymore. We can even find a government facility holding an alien in the original Fallout. The glow is what remains of the vault-tec research facility, a location at the forefront of military research. This was one of the first and the main site to conduct forced evolutionary virus testing before it was moved to the Mariposa military base. They still had tanks of FEV stored at the time of the bombs dropping, and being such an important part of the military research effort, the place was targeted by multiple nukes, releasing the FEV and highly irradiating the entire area, leading to the glow it's named after now. And deep down on level 4 of the facility, sheltered from the nukes, we can find the remains of an alien that was being experimented on. Now, carrying on with this, the Master is the main antagonist of the original Fallout, and due to his mutation is able to awaken psychic abilities. The best defense the Vault Dweller can obtain to deal with this is by obtaining a psychic nullifier, which can be obtained from the Master's test subjects. The Fallout official game guide had this to say about it: the psychic nullifier. A strange device, possibly the product of an alien technology. It blocks telepathic or psychic commands. We can also again find this same item in Fallout New Vegas as well, where the forecaster is using it to stop the headaches he gets from thinking too much. It blocks his psychic abilities as well, and he refers to it as his medicine, though his abilities are more about being able to forecast the future than create horrible visions for other people. The player can even pay the forecaster for his thinking, and he'll reveal what turns out to be accurate forecasts of future events. He doesn't know where his ability comes from. Maybe it's a result of the experiments the Zetans have been conducting on humanity, or it's just a random mutation. In Fallout 2, we can again find the alien blaster either being sold by Willie, the traveling merchant, or by getting lucky on the Enclave oil rig. Whilst stuck in a maze commonly used to haze Enclave members, one of the terminals at random can give multiple skill checks, and if you pass the speech check, you'll obtain the alien blaster. Looks like the Enclave has been studying it for some reason. And we can even find more proof of aliens being studied by the government within the Sierra Army Depot. Over the many years, this location has changed roles from ammo storage to ammo disposal to finally a high-tech research center, focused primarily on robotics, but also biological and conventional weapon programs. This is where we find Skynet, who, given some of its voice lines, may or may not wish to enslave or eradicate all of humanity. Yes, it's just like Terminator Skynet, just with less Naked Arnold and more steel.
I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
Using alien technology, they were experimenting with AI and created a true AI in 2059. Realizing the limitations of being stuck in a computer, the researchers began work on a cybernetic brain to implant Skynet in a robot brain body, so it could explore the world. Couldn't go wrong at all. Fortunately, this was all shut down in 2077 when the military assumed control, cloning the AI to operate the base's defenses and locking the original away down inside the base. In 2081, Skynet gained true sentience, only to remain locked in a prison of silicon and steel for the next 160 years. The Chosen One can pass some pretty high skill checks to obtain the body parts and cybernetic brain needed to finally free Skynet. Although if at any point the Chosen One has annoyed it, upon being freed, it'll turn hostile and start spouting off about eradicating the inferior species. So, you know, good job releasing the murderous part alien AI into the world. Hilariously, we can also find another alien skeleton here. Oh, well, it might not be. You see, it's the exact same model as the previous born aliens. However, the Sierra Depot experiment log tells a different story. Written by Dr. H. Lecter, the reference will be very obvious in a moment. These logs go on to record many experiments that Dr. Lecter undertook, with an honestly horrifying lack of respect for human bodies. The first log talks about how some other scientists pranked him by altering his organ extractor, resulting in a deceased soldier coming out of the operation and missing his colon, and the doctor nearly didn't even notice. Then, to get back at them, he removed the same soldier's liver, cooked it, and sent it to them with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. If you hadn't realized yet, this was very much a reference to Hannibal Lecter the Cannibal. The other main log that we are interested in though is his notes on mentats. He began feeding one of his experiments a steady diet of mentats with some special enhancers and did record an IQ increase from 39 to 200. It might be that this was just a reused asset and that the alien's body is meant to be this experiment. It wouldn't be the first time we've seen people's craniums begin to expand, like with Brother Charles or the Enclave in Appalachia using the egghead serum. But let's jump ahead now to Fallout 3 and the alien invasion of Earth. On initial release, Wandering the Waste, you could get the unidentified flying debris random event, which rains down ammo on the Firelands. Unfortunately, because it's a random event, the ammo is spread everywhere, and it's entirely possible for the Firelands to get stuck somewhere unreachable or hidden within a rock. I personally remember being at school when a friend told me about this one, although I was pretty young and I didn't know it was a random event, so I spent all weekend scouring the patch of barren rock they told me it happened to for them just for nothing to happen. Now I know it was random and I wasted all of that time staring at rocks, and I still love this game. But anyway, this wasn't the only alien blaster you could obtain. Around the top of the map near the clifftop shacks, you can receive the radio signal Recon Craft Theta, which appears to be some kind of emergency signal. Just listen. Some believe that when reversing the audio, you can actually hear the alien is never alive. Approaching the location of this signal, you find a crashed alien spaceship and the remains of an alien. This is the first time we've seen one of them that isn't just a collection of bones. They have small, weak-looking bodies and large heads with green skin and bulbous black eyes. and it looks like this one has seen better days. We have no idea how they crashed or what happened, and on the floor we can find the alien blaster, an incredibly strong weapon with a finite amount of ammo. There are several other locations we can find the ammo though, other than just the crashed spaceship. We can find ammo at Fort Bannister, where we can find several alien power cells by an overturned truck, and also at Fort Independence, the home base of the Outcasts, a faction of the Brotherhood of Steel who've broken off and are pursuing their own goals. In the Outcasts armory, we can find some alien power cells. Both of these locations were military installations before the bomb dropped, with Fort Bannister being so important that it was targeted multiple times with nothing but ruins remaining. During the Broken Steel DLC, we could also find them at both the Adams Air Force Base, as part of the Enclave Armory, and perhaps more interestingly at the Olney Power Works. They were working on other experimental power sources here, so maybe they were researching the alien power cells. The cracked spaceship encounter changed with the release of the Mothership Zeta DLC in August of 2009. Now, when you approach the dead alien, you'll be abducted, floating into the air in a bright light before waking in a cell aboard a spaceship. This place obviously has some of the most concrete lore, but also a very controversial sticking point, so let's dive on in. The Lone Wanderer wakes up during an alien medical experiment, probably something probe related. On a side note, can we just feel sorry for the Fallout protagonists? The number of times they get experimented on or have their brain messed with is a lot. Like during Point Lookout, part of it gets cut out and Old World Blues has the entire thing removed and then lost. It just sucks for them. Anyway, after some probably not gentle probing, the Lone Wanderer wakes up in a cell with Soma. After a quick conversation that elaborates on the fact that you're both stuck on a ship with little green men experimenting on you, you decide to trick them into opening the door by fighting each other and turning on the aliens when they enter. This is where we see the first example of how physically weak the Zetans are. The two of you are able to take them out just using your fists, something that would be difficult to do with most wasteland creatures. Proceeding deeper into the ship, we meet Sally, a young girl who was abducted shortly after the bombs dropped along with her sister, which makes her around 200 years old. And during those 200 years, she's got a pretty good idea of the ship's layout. She's pretty bored of playing with the aliens though, so she'll help us off the ship. Sally will crawl through the ship vents, unlocking doors or alerting the Lone Wanderer when aliens are nearby, until you get to the engineering core where you release the cryopods, possibly explaining how Sally is over 200 years old, and also making you wonder how long the aliens have been watching Earth. Out of the cryopods emerge people from wildly varying time periods. Private Elliot Turkorian was a medic in the US Army and was sent to Anchorage where the aliens abducted him and his team just before the battle for Anchorage. Paulson is a cowboy from the Wild West period of America's history with a tough exterior, but using the right perks, he will open up about the aliens abducting his family and separating them. Most likely, they aren't with us anymore. Toshiro Kago gives us our biggest time jump though. He's a samurai, although the time period for him is a little difficult to place. The official game guide for Fallout 3 places him as coming from the Azuchi Momoyama period, which was 1568 to 1603. But the symbol on his armor is the real-world emblem of Katabami clan and was popular during the Heian period, which was 794 to 1185. Either way, we know the aliens have been watching us for a long time, abducting humans for who knows what. Maybe there are more secrets deeper in the ship. The final pod opens to release Colonel Hartigan's body, a US astronaut abducted during the height of the space race. During his flight, Hartigan was abducted and the government covered it up, saying he crashed into some high-altitude weather balloons. Hartigan actually tried to initiate first contact with the aliens, explaining he came in peace and their two people could learn so much from each other. What Hartigan didn't know was that the aliens had been observing humanity most of its history. The aliens didn't care for him and were pretty brutal in using the shock prods on him, something he unfortunately didn't survive, being left in stasis, perfectly preserved for us to rob him of his spacesuit. After this, we're told by Sally that we need to disable power cells in 3 separate locations to be able to get further into the ship. For those that decide to explore though, there are some mysteries on this ship that raise many questions and answer a couple of them. Heading into the cargo bay, we can find the aliens who've been collecting everything. There's broken toilets, radios, weapons. One area has some lingerie that they appear to be in the middle of inspecting. Maybe their next plan is to try seducing humans. Tucked away in one corner is the personal computer of Reed Underwood, a founding member of the Quare Verum, or Seek the Truth in Latin. The terminal logs detail how they suspect the government of having alien technology, how they found a base that isn't supposed to exist in the desert, and with the aid of a Dr. Aldwin Morley, they managed to break in and steal something, proof that the government is working with aliens. Then the hunt begins. Dr. Morley betrayed them, and with all the other members gone, Reed stores the technology in a secure safe and, presumably, faces his fate as the last member of the Quare Verum. Having already hacked our way into the terminal, we can unlock the safe, and after scouring the area for it, we can find it tucked away in a pile of rubbish the aliens are currently vaporizing to get rid of. Inside is the MPLX Nova Surge, and a note from none other than Dr. Morley. The Nova Surge has proven to be a tough nut to crack. The output is still very high, causing massive injury to targets, but it's drawing far too much power from its energy cells. We also need to get the weight down on the weapon, as it's a bit heavy for a simple replacement sidearm. The problem still seems to be the coolant coils, which are accounting for almost 50% of the weapon's weight. The good news is that the housing for the weapon has been approved, and this is likely the final design. Unfortunately, I need to increase our staff's hours to 7 days a week again so we can finally have the prototype ready for testing by the end of the year. The MPLX Nova Surge was an early prototype of the plasma weapons we can find around the wasteland, and it is heavily implied to be based off of alien technology. The Fallout 3 official Game of the Year guide had this to say about it: a secretive prototype to the Enclave's plasma pistol. The Nova Surge functions in a very similar manner and proves a conspiracy theory you long suspected, which to me implies very heavily that its origins are not terrestrial, and that they didn't just steal a piece of advanced military tech, but something of alien origins. There is another quote that ties it together, which we'll get to in a moment, but first we'll carry on deeper into this location. Passing through the collection of junk from Earth, we can enter into the research lab, another area you never had to enter, but possibly one of the darkest in the ship because of the implications. The first room in the research wing has different vehicles from Earth being studied, and even has Hartigan's space pod from when the aliens first became known to the public. Venturing further in, things become weird. The aliens appear to have an obsession with Giddy Up Buttercup. You encounter just a couple in the first room with a recorded interview with Sally.
Hello, Mr. Alien. Yeah, I know. I'll talk into the thing. I don't know why you brought me back here. We've done this a whole bunch of... Hey! Giddy Up Buttercup! Wow! I always wanted one of those. Why do you have one? I don't understand. What do you want? It's a toy. A toy! Why are you so excited? You're weird.
The aliens were weirdly excited for Sally to recognize them, and as we go further, we can encounter entire squadrons of Giddy Up Buttercups. None of them are painted yellow like in Fallout 4, but they are white and stacked to the ceiling with the original posters on the wall in some areas, where we can find out that this robot pony only cost $16,000. And in the final room, we can encounter the test chamber. In the center is a Giddy Up Buttercup surrounded by dead humans, and as we walk down, the Buttercup's eyes blink red several times before just cutting out. We were either saved by low power, or maybe one of the many injuries we've had from having part of our brain removed to being probed by these aliens has somehow saved us. Just to add some context to everything we've talked about, dipping back into the Fallout 3 game guide, they had this to say about the alien faction. Once thought to be covered up by a government conspiracy and believed only by crackpot groups such as the Quare Verum, evidence of extraterrestrial life can be traced back throughout human history, but became nationally recognized after the mysterious disappearance of the Clarabelle 7 space pod during the 1960 space race. It is said that the alien technology was the basis of many of the Enclave's more exotic and impressive weaponry and robotics, and even toy manufacturers such as Wilson Automatoys weren't immune to these accusations. Recently, after the discovery of an alien body in Fort Bannister, the shocking truth was revealed. The aliens are not only real and alive, but they're back, and they're pissed. It definitely seems like these robo-horses were created using alien technology. We can actually encounter Alan Glass, the co-founder and more importantly lead toy designer on the Giddy Up Buttercup. Despite helping him get over his tragic past, he never helps us with any of the details of how the toys came to be created. It may even just be that this is just a knock-on effect of the alien technology being introduced to everything, but we'll get into that later on. Before we move on to the rest of the spaceship, I do want to mention another toy though. Once again, it's conspiracy theory time, so don your tinfoil hats. The aliens are experimenting with what appear to be psychic children's toys. The pony isn't the only one we can encounter across the games. In my recent Supernatural video, I mentioned Teddy Fears and how it shows up in strange setups across the wasteland, usually commanding other inanimate objects to commit heinous crimes. The pre-release video on YouTube for the Fallout TV show actually states that the manufacturer for the Teddy Fears, which may or may not be automatoys, we don't know, was being sued for their teddies having a psychic influence on children, causing sleep paralysis. One psychologist even appears to have been swayed by them, calling the Teddy Fears misunderstood. We'll come back to why that's important later on. For now, let's continue with the ship. We have to go through 3 areas, disabling the generators to proceed: the cryo lab, the robotics factory, and the hangar. Each one has its own quirks. The hangar has the broken spaceship you were abducted with, and using the stabilizing poles you can send out shockwaves to send aliens flying. The cryo lab has plenty of wasteland subjects you can release to attack the aliens, and robotics lets you gain a drone control device, so you can take over the drones and have some support. Going through these areas, we also begin to notice a caste system in place with the aliens. They are so far mainly split into 2 groups, the combatants and the non-combatants. When you first meet the red shirt wearing non-combatant alien workers, Sally calls them harmless, and she's right. They only cower and flee when you approach, and if you are so cold as to gun them down for no reason, you actually gain bad karma for it. Once all 3 generators are dealt with, the lone survivor goes for a spacewalk to get to the observation deck, where the aliens fire their death ray to try and cow the escapees into submission. For some reason though, despite the many long years they've been watching the wasteland, and most of the survivors on this particular ship being from America, the aliens never learned our language, and so its tirade is ignored. The lone wanderer presses on until they hit the other big dark secret aboard the ship. In the experimentation lab, we encounter the abominations. I'll let the official game guide describe these. The true horror of the aliens' abduction begins to sink in as you discover the more grisly side of their probing. This series of chambers is dotted with the corpses of those of particular interest to these fiends, along with the aliens' greatest triumph: half-human, half-alien hybrids known only, and suitably, as abominations. I mentioned earlier the aliens were physically weak. Well, looks like their answer was to fuse human and alien DNA. The environmental factors such as radiation in the wasteland appear to be causing some issues, however. The abominations are physically tougher than the aliens, but are highly aggressive, attacking everything that isn't another abomination. The Institute had the same issue with tainted wastelanders, so it makes you wonder what a clean sample like Nate or Nora would enable them to create. After fighting through several areas, the player ends up in a death ray control room, where, whether by accident or on purpose, it is possible to aim the death ray at Earth and fire, completely obliterating some poor section and revealing just how powerful alien weapons are. There is very little the humans could have done if the aliens just unloaded these death rays on the planet. It reloads incredibly quickly and is an energy weapon, not really something that can be intercepted. After successfully taking over the bridge, another mothership appears and attacks. Depending on who died to get you there, this fight can be more difficult, with aliens beaming directly into the room. Eventually though, the lone wanderer with the help of his new companions is able to take down the mothership, and you unlock this one as a player home, although most of the ship at this point is inaccessible, which is a real shame and annoying when you missed one lore point and need to travel back for it. There is a massively contentious lore point I haven't mentioned yet. While going through all of these areas, you can collect audio logs from different people who've been abducted, from your companions or people all across time. One of them, though, is hotly debated. Alien Captive recorded log 17 is completely silent apart from the alien babble, but turning on subtitles reveals the truth.
I'm Holly Beresford, a linguistic specialist for the USSA. I think I'm beginning to understand you, but you need to stop shocking me. Damn, I wish you could understand me. Do you understand? That's it, you get it. I mean you no harm, I just want to learn how to speak with you. Then perhaps we can discuss what you need from us. What are you doing with that needle? No, get it away from me. No, please, we can be friends. You don't need to.
Someone was revealing the extent of the American military and trying to fight some kind of mind control or compulsion to reveal the launch codes for America's ICBMs. Our defenses consist of 3 battalions of light infantry, 34 pieces of field artillery, 108 armored vehicles, and 42 aerial vehicles. We have 38 ICBMs always on alert and ready to fire when the word is passed down from the White House. The codes to activate the launch sequence are... no, I can't let you get out of my mind. The codes are, no, I can't betray, my head, I can't, won't, and that's how it ends. This one tape has caused a bunch of issues. It's required to get the Alien Archivist achievement, but due to it not being voiced, many believe it's cut content. It really comes down to whether you believe Bethesda forgot to take it out or put in the audio. Either way, at this point, I don't think they're fixing it. We do find that the aliens are abducting a lot of high-up personnel in the US, including a US senator and even the vault-tec assistant chief executive officer employee who is inspecting Vault 76. One last tape that is particularly interesting from this DLC is Alien Captive Log 16. It seems that the aliens weren't too happy when the linguist nearly cracked their language. Maybe they didn't bother using our language because they don't want communication between us for some reason. I mean, I suppose if your cattle on the way to the slaughterhouse began speaking your language and then begged for mercy, it would be incredibly off-putting. We do see more of how the aliens live on the spaceship with what seems to be that caste system in place, with workers and soldiers being distinctly separated. We also find hints to their lifestyle, or lack of one really. They do seem to eat some rather disgusting looking fish creatures like this worm, and there are no decorations in their room, just rows of sleeping pods. Even the captain's room is very sparse, only really being unique in that they have the space to themselves. Heading back to Earth, we get more evidence in Fallout 3 of the government being aware of these aliens. At the Citadel, the remains of the Pentagon, we can find a terminal in the archives that details codename Palandine. Further investigations into the UFO codenamed Palandine have confirmed our suspicions. On the evening of May 3rd, 2062, an alien craft of unknown make and origin did indeed breach the airspace just north of Hagerstown, Maryland, and crashed into a heavily wooded, non-residential area. Unfortunately, attempts to retrieve the craft proved unsuccessful. It simply just could not be located, either due to some kind of advanced invisibility shielding, or because the occupants managed to make repairs and vacate the crash site before our arrival. Despite our failure of recovery, the significance of this event cannot be denied. We are not alone. We've yet to visit Hagerstown. It's just outside of Fallout 3's map, and the map for Fallout 76 took some liberties with where things were located, so it doesn't exist there either. I did look into Palandine as the code name, and I think someone at the Pentagon was really into Star Trek, as that's the name of one of the characters in A Stitch in Time, a book released in June of 2000. If you're going to use a codename for aliens, a Star Trek one makes sense. New Vegas doesn't have a whole lot on the alien front. There's the cult of Elvis, or the Kings as they're known, but they don't seem to be aware of Elvis's extraterrestrial origins. There is an encounter with aliens if you have the Wild Wasteland perk, which makes it disputable as being canon. Near the Howitzer farmstead, you can find 3 aliens wandering around a campsite, and up on the cliff is their spaceship hovering. Weirdly, only the alien captain here is hostile, and if you manage to take them out without the others noticing, they just don't acknowledge your existence. Flying around the UFO, we can see it's the same one from Fallout 3 and is heavily damaged. Though this takes place 4 years after the events aboard Mothership Zeta, maybe the Lone Wanderer is still up there causing trouble for the aliens. Which may be true, as heading into Fallout 4, our first encounter with aliens is, you guessed it, a spaceship crashing down. These guys are terrible at flying. After hitting level 20 at any random encounter site, the sole survivor may see a UFO streaking through the sky. Following it, you eventually stumble upon the crash site, still on fire. And more interestingly, a trail of green goo, leading away to a nearby cave. Inside is a hurt alien who is immediately hostile, and the lone survivor can put them down for the good of America, once again earning themselves an alien blaster. This one looks very different to the one in Fallout 3. It's chunkier with a less of a barrel, and it isn't silver and blue. Bear the Fallout 3 one in mind though, as we'll encounter it later on. This is also the first game where the aliens are outright called Zetans. Up until now, all references have called them aliens, Of course, we had Mothership Zeta, but we also blew up another mothership, which I doubt had the same name. On one of the many loading screens for Fallout 4, we can get this. If the conspiracy theories are to be believed, Earth has been visited by an alien species on several occasions. These Zetans are said to be armed with powerful energy beam weapons that can completely disintegrate enemies. Zeta Reticuli is a star system located roughly 39 light years from us, and has an interesting history with UFO fans. On the 19th of September 1961, Betty and Barney Hill were driving home from a vacation at Niagara Falls when they spotted something in the sky. It moved erratically, and eventually, after they followed it, it landed in front of them. Using telepathy, the humanoid creature spoke to the Hills and told them to watch. Fearing for their lives, they tried driving out of there before hearing a beeping and falling unconscious. Coming back to just outside of Concord, missing several hours of their night. Betty went on to have weird dreams and described the aliens as small, grey and with big eyes, which spawned the Greys as we know them today in modern media. And this was then later matched to the Zeta Reticuli star system by Marjorie Fish, who later went on to say it had been disproven by advances in satellite and telescope technology. When this story came out though, it was huge. It sold a totally ridiculous amount of books about it. The Hills had hypnosis done, and even had scientists take samples from their clothes, vehicles, and the surrounding area. It was a very big deal, and it does fit in with the Fallout setting, being the 1960s culture, living the American dream with futuristic technology. The story did go on later to be expanded by ufology, and included the Greys meeting the government at Area 51 and trading technologies with them, which all sounds pretty familiar, right? In fact, we mentioned several times about the alien technology being used by the American government, and even toy manufacturers. But in Nuka World, we get proof that even vault-tec were aware of the Zetans. Galactic Zone was a collaboration between Nuka World, Robco, and vault-tec. Robco was showing off what their robots would look like in the future in the Robco Battle Zone, and the entire park is filled with their robots. vault-tec's location was called Among the Stars, and shows a potential future for humanity in space, living in their custom vaults, and of course, because it's vault-tec, they were experimenting on both the park goers and their own staff, using radiation and airborne toxins to see what would happen. Finally, in Nuka Galaxy, Nuka Cola's contribution, we have a roller coaster ride, with the theme of helping Nuka Girl fight off aliens and save the galaxy. When we do meet the aliens on this ride though, they are very familiar. They look identical to Zetans, even down to their weapons, which resemble the alien blaster from Fallout 3. Maybe over the years they've refined their weapons, but obviously Nuka World and Robco knew what Zetans looked like, down to the smallest detail. Maybe they were preparing for the aliens to attack, creating new robots and space vaults using the alien technology that we have to admit at this point is rampant throughout the American government and corporations. We do come to the Among These Stars exhibit for more than just taking over or unlocking that sweet power armor as well. During the quest Trip to the Stars, the sole survivor will need to come here and collect spacesuits for a rather interesting character. Dara Hubble is the leader of the Hubbleologists in the area, and according to her, is a direct descendant of Dick Hubble, the founder of Hubbleology. Back before the Great War, Dick Hubble set out to create a cult and save as many as he could based on his own experience with extraterrestrials. Everyday people are plagued by the spirits of the dead, causing neurodynes to form. These can also form through repeated contact with suppressors, people who suppress the talent and abilities of those around them. It just so happens that everyone who isn't part of Hubbleology is a suppressor. Dick Hubble, or the Hub as he came to be known, was visited by the Starfather and given the knowledge to cleanse these neurodynes through the alignment process. This uses Zeta radiation to clear out the neurodynes and is based upon how much time, effort, and most importantly, money you put into Hubbleology. The Starfather is an extraterrestrial that created all life on Earth and watched over it until it was led astray by the neurodynes. The Hub managed to convince the Starfather to help him save the true faithful so they could join him on the planet Quetzal in the Xiphus constellation. Once there, they would learn to use the full extent of their minds and become like gods, so they could come back to Earth and save them from the neurodynes, forever ruling over humanity to keep it safe. If this sounds familiar, this was Fallout's take on Scientology, though maybe there actually is some truth to all of this. After the Great War, we can meet Hubbleologists in two main locations, San Francisco and Nuka World. In Fallout 2, the player meets the Hubbleologists in San Francisco, where they are ostracized and disliked by the majority of the population, seeing them as con artists, but Despite this, the player can still help them when they ask. They ask the Chosen One for help fueling their spaceship, the ESS Quetzal. This can be resolved multiple ways depending on what the character does, but no matter what happens, whether you get the fuel or they make their own cheap alternative, the flight is doomed to fail. Even on the one ending that doesn't have them explode or get vented, they still suffocate from the recycled air, doomed to float above Earth forevermore. Plays out again depending on the sole survivor's actions in Nuka World. Dara Hubble will ask for help gathering spacesuits and powering up a UFO nearby, which turns out to be just a scrapped old ride. The sole survivor can help them by clearing the way and collecting fusion cores to power it. However, if they aren't paying attention or just want to see what happens, they can put in too many fusion cores, which will result in the explosion of every hubologist's head while spinning. After this is all done, Dara will give the sole survivor Hub's alien blaster, which is just like a normal alien blaster apart from with the legendary look effect on it. Maybe it wasn't all insane gobbledygook. Which brings us to joining Hubology. The sole survivor can join and have their first alignment for the low price of 50 caps. This only clears a few of the Neurodynes though, so they'll need more alignments. And wouldn't you know it, the price goes up each time, as well as our rank. You can receive 8 alignments and reach level 8 in the Hubologist for a whopping 19,400 caps. Not a small amount by any means, and other than receiving a fairly high dose of radiation by the end of it, you might not even immediately notice a difference. But each alignment did actually raise your intelligence stats by whatever number alignment it was. +1 for alignment 1, +2 for alignment 2, and so on, with them all stacking. So if you do all 8 alignments at the same time, you gain +36 intellect. And you may even be able to see why you just wasted all that money. It does work though, which adds more weight to what the hub preached. They did create the alignment technology and they did have an alien blaster, so maybe they did actually meet the Starfather. Looking at the chair closely, we can see a resemblance to something else as well. The radiation emitters on either side of the subject's head look very similar to the Zeta gun that we can get from Jack Cabot's body, or in his house while doing the Cabot's questline. I've covered the Cabots a few times, but it's particularly relevant here. Lorenzo Cabot, many years before the Great War, was convinced that humans were only the latest intelligent species on Earth, and that before them, there had been another extraterrestrial race. He was laughed at by everyone else in his profession, but eventually found the ancient city Ubar in the deserts of Rub al-Khali. Despite numerous setbacks, like the desert itself was fighting him, he eventually made his way deep into this lost city and found alien remains, tools made for inhuman hands, and the crown he still wears to this day. It gave him immortality, psychic abilities, and, unfortunately, psychosis. He became incredibly violent, and his son Jack had to contain him to stop him causing more damage. Jack's been trying to remove it all these years, but has only made a few breakthroughs. The Abramlin field, which contains Lorenzo, the serum that has kept him and his family alive all these years, and the effects of Zeta radiation. Lore-wise, Zeta radiation is harmless to people, although it has a detrimental effect on Lorenzo and his crown. In fact, when Lorenzo is breaking out, Jack has the sole survivor flood his containment room with Zeta radiation. And Jack always carries a modified gamma gun that can utilize Zeta radiation in case it's needed again. It's worth noting as well that the Hubologists aren't the only ones contacted by something from beyond our planet that calls itself the Creator. In New Vegas, at the Rep contest site, we can find Jason Bright and the Bright Brotherhood. Jason is the prophet of the Great Journey and has been receiving visions from something he calls the Creator since some point after he became a ghoul. In the visions, he sees a place called the Far Beyond, where ghouls could find a paradise and heal with their creator. And their method of getting there? Rockets. The Far Beyond is somewhere in space, though Jason believes it is somewhere that only ghouls can go due to the radiation. It certainly all sounds very similar to Hubology. It does make you wonder whether the Starfather is real and is from the race that lived in Ubar. Maybe they did create humans before setting off to some other star system. In The Mountain of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft, my favourite Lovecraft book, the Elder Things predated humanity and waged wars as new entities from the stars came down. They created life on Earth and what would later come to be humanity, along with other things like the horrifying Shoggoth, until the Elder Things had to retreat into slumber or leave to another planet or just passed away from the extreme cold. There is a lot of cosmic horror in Fallout, and you can see my full video on it here, but maybe the Starfather did create all life on Earth before some other species forced them to leave for now. Which neatly brings us to Fallout 76 and the invasion of Zetans. Fallout 76 expanded on just how prevalent Zetans were in American media in the Fallout universe. You can obtain framed movie posters for your camp that clearly show Zetans, and with names like the invaders from beyond our galaxy. Appalachia in particular has a close history with the Zetans. The Flatwoods monster has been around Appalachia since before the war. We know that from its appearance on the Tales from the West Virginia Hills magazine and holotape. We can even find a tape about Colton Pickens being abducted and experimented on, though whether he was just incredibly drunk is up for debate.
This is Deputy D.B. Walton. Interview started at 3:35 a.m. All right, Mr. Pickens. Tell me everything that happened by starting from the beginning.
I was out behind my hot dog stand taking out the trash, and I saw this light shining from the woods. At first, I thought it was a hunter with a flashlight. But then, the light started changing.
Changing? How?
Well, the light started turning different colors. First it was blue, and then green, and then red, and then back to blue. Wait, maybe it was green, blue, red. No, actually it's red, blue.
Yup, we get it. What happened next?
I suddenly got real dizzy, and I dropped the trash bag I was carrying. Next thing I knew, I was on the ground. I don't even remember falling. I looked up, and that's when I saw it.
Can you be more specific?
It was a man, but it also wasn't a man. It had gray skin and these huge black eyes, and it was wearing like a spacesuit or something. What was really weird was that it wasn't saying anything, but I could hear it anyway. In my mind, it told me to follow it onto its spaceship.
Flatwoods monster again? All right, I've heard enough. Colton Pickens, I'm arresting you for drunken disorderly conduct and indecent exposure.
Indecent what? What are you talking about? I didn't do anything wrong.
Cole, found you on the roof of your shack, buck naked, yelling at the top of your lungs. Your blood alcohol was .23. And it took 4 deputies to get you into handcuffs. We all go on a bender now and then, but you need to keep it at home.
What? No! Come on! You have to believe me! The monster made me drunk. It was experimenting on me, controlling my mind. When are you people gonna do something about the Flatwoods monster? It needs to be killed!
I've had enough. Just get him out of here. This is Deputy D.B. Walton. Interview terminated.
The Flatwoods monster is a creature in a floating suit with purple haze coming off of it that you can use to mind control other creatures nearby. Supposedly, this is how it got Colton onto the ship. If we get up close and personal with the Flatwoods monster and take it down for the good of the wasteland, we can see that it's tiny little green legs, and using photo mode to clip into the helmet, it's definitely a Zetan. Maybe something about staying on our planet long term has caused it to mutate, and now it needs the suit like a high-tech wheelchair. Or it's just another result of Zetans messing with DNA like with the Abomination. The Tales from the West Virginia Hills raises some questions about a character we previously met as well. A young pioneer scout by the name of Fred Fisher was out camping with his troop when they saw lights flashing through the sky. His friends dared him to investigate, and when he did, he blacked out, waking up in a dark place, with a girl named Sally talking to him. As they talk, Fred becomes increasingly worried about the people Sally says want to play with him.
Tonight, we bring you the final chapter of Who Goes There? The Strange Encounter in Flatwoods. In the last episode, Pioneer Scout Fred Fisher met a curious girl named Sally while hiding in the dark. But, as it turned out, they weren't alone.
There are other people here? Yeah, they probably just went to get more food. They'll be back soon enough. You can wait with me, and they'll give you food too. You just have to do what they want. What do you mean? When they want to play games with you. Games? What kind of games? I'm still learning the rules. Mostly, they're kind of boring, and only hurt when they use the needles. Needles?
Then, a bright light turns on as Sally begins to chant.
Sally, what's that helmet thing you're wearing? It looks like it's screwed into your
There are a couple of ways we can take this. Maybe Sally has been with the Zetans even longer than we thought. We know that the Flatwoods monster can mind control creatures, so maybe they've messed with her mind over the years and the backstory we got was wrong. They used her to see how she interacted with new kids, or just because they didn't have enough holding cells. The helmet she wore and the marks left on the side of Fred's head do indicate that something was being done to their brains. Or maybe a Zetan was impersonating Sally. The strange helmet was one of the helmets we've seen them wear, and in the dark, Fred didn't know who he was talking to until the lights came on. It could even be that Bethesda just threw it in as an Easter egg or a random occurrence. Either way, it's yet another reason to not trust Sally. She did seem awfully capable of traversing the ship, and even taking over the controls. It also makes me think of the Forecaster and his psychic abilities. We know the Zetan experiment on those they capture, and here they did something to Fred's brain. The psychic nullifiers were also made using their technology, so maybe the Forecaster was abducted at some point, and that's how he gained the ability. Maybe that's where his parents are. Sally is still alive on the ship centuries after being abducted, but her sister doesn't appear to be. Some people are released, some are experimented on, and some don't ever wake up. The Flatwoods monster isn't the only potentially extraterrestrial entity we can meet on the lonely roads of the Appalachian wasteland either. The Smiling Man is a rather creepy figure you can meet as you wander. You can talk to him, at no point will he drop the smile. He will though mention his name is Indrid, and if asked about his coat will say, "I am cold." Indrid Cold, also known as the Grinning or the Smiling Man, first supposedly appeared in the real world just before the first sighting of Mothman, and the two have been connected ever since. When Woodrow Derenberger was out driving one night, he came across an unidentifiable vehicle with a strange man who never stopped smiling. He kept his hands pinned under his armpits as if cold and only used his elbows to gesture. Speaking telepathically, he told Woodrow his name was Cold and wished happiness upon him, revealing that he just wanted to know about humanity and that he was from planet Lanulos in the galaxy of Ganymedes. We aren't the only ones to meet him though. It seems he's been going around and worrying locals just by his mannerism. For example, in this terminal entry for the Middle Mountain pit stop, Clyde details talking to a strange man. Some freak came into the bar last night, didn't even see him come through the door, just looked up from cleaning the counter and there he was, grinning from ear to ear, wider than should be possible. He didn't greet me, in fact he said nothing at all the whole time he was here. He put exactly 10 caps on the counter, one at a time. That's how much a drink costs, so I handed him a beer. He took the bottle and sat by the fire, for hours. Didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even drink the beer, the ungrateful bastard. Only sound I heard him make was a faint chuckle under his breath. Freaked me the fuck out. Gonna keep my shotgun real close from now on. Indrid doesn't seem hostile at any point though, just inquisitive. He was also used to hint at future cryptids before they were released, such as the Blue Devil and Jersey Devil. While we can't tell him about it, there is a location that he might be interested in. The mysterious guide stones are a set of carved stones stacked together on a hill overlooking the Federal Disposable Field HZ-21. And it appears we aren't the only ones who find them interesting. At vault-tec University, we can find Michael Blake's terminal, and the following two entries are pretty interesting. Jacqueline bought more of her notes around the other day, still not sure what to make of these runes. They don't match any of the native petroglyphs in the area, nor do they match any of the old European runes I would have expected. Still, I'm confident I will find a match somewhere, and if not, there may be enough to go on to piece together a rough idea of what they say. Anything. I'm beginning to think it may be nonsense, but I am intrigued. Jacqueline has instructed me that she would feel safer if I move the translation key offline. The woman is paranoid, but I don't disagree that it's for good reason. It is because of this that she insists on keeping the original notes with her. She says it's for the best, just in case someone gets to one of us, so none of us have all the pieces. Even Agent Wilson's taking precautions. We could be onto something big here. Then again, I still maintain the runes as simply ancient petroglyphs left by the indigenous people of the region. Jacqueline believes they may be extraterrestrial in nature, but I'll stick with Occam on this one. The hypothesis with the fewer assumptions is often the correct one. Agent Curtis Wilson is an interesting character who has connections to a lot of different mysteries, and we can find his terminal at the investigator's cabin. He does have a file on the guide stones and a mysterious signal among other mysteries, but all it says is access denied. The one entry we can open is, "My name is Curtis Wilson. The BADTFL originally sent me out here to investigate the Free States movement. I worked closely with a local sheriff, Scott Darcy. However, during the course of the investigation, we turned up vast conspiracies originating from our own government institutions. It became clear that if I wanted to get to the bottom of this, I would need to quit my job and do my own investigations. Then the war happened, and we survived. Suddenly, doors that were shut tight were now wide open and unguarded. But before we could get our answers and finish our investigations, Sheriff Darcy turned up dead under suspicious circumstances. I'm taking it as a sign that I should leave and continue my investigations elsewhere when the time is right. The contents of my findings will remain inaccessible until then. The world needs to know. Maybe when the time is right, the terminal entries will actually finally be accessible. Now, the data mining Discord went deep in this one and did what Michael Blake was unable to do, discovering a message from something out in the stars. Hidden within the game files was a guide to an alien language that was composed of a bunch of different symbols, which were merged across these slabs. And to start with, these made no sense. However, at the National Radio Astronomy Research Center, there was a terminal requiring a password that didn't exist. The terminal entries turned out to be the key and also incredibly ominous. To do: remove actual translations, add alien font tags, long have wait, arrive, stars listen, we are going to come soon, prepare yourself for destruction of your life by fire when you arrive, life weakens, protect what remains here on Earth. The terminal entries that we do have access to in this building all talk about a mysterious signal they received that they aren't to talk about. Suddenly, people started retiring at very young ages and moving to different parts of the country, even one of them who had no family. Using this information and the codes on the locked terminal, the data mining Discord managed to get this from the guidestones. We have traveled for so long. Soon we will arrive. Your planet weakens. When the war/destruction comes, save yourselves. We are coming from the stars. Listen for our signal. Look for our arrival. We are coming to Earth. Kind of indicates there are some saviors coming from a distant star system to save humanity after the war. During this, it was found that the alien symbols don't match those of the Zetans, so we have yet another alien species targeting Earth, though these ones may be benevolent. It sounds to me like it may even be the Starfather coming to protect those faithful that were left. Carrying on, we could find an alien blaster back on launch that looked identical to the Fallout 4 one, but finding it and its ammo would take some legwork. At the toxic pond and wreckage in a pool of toxic water is an open safe containing an alien blaster and a rusted key. Taking the key to Freddy Fear's House of Scares, the rusted key unlocks a room on the top of the building. A note slid under the door reads, "They're onto us. I was fired. I'm leaving town tonight. Stay safe. LS." Inside on a desk is the stolen terminal passcode holotape, which is a key for our next location, the Shadowbreeze Apartments in Morganstown. Using it, we can access Trevor Mormon's personal terminal and find out who LS is. Mr. Mormon, your new housekeeper, Mr. Arnold Butterwood, is available to start immediately. Please let us know what time would be the most convenient for you for him to begin. As per your request, Miss Lena Stark, your former housekeeper, has been terminated. Additionally, we have forwarded your concerns to the authorities. Please do not hesitate to contact me personally with any further concerns or questions. Thank you for your business. Samuel Wellingsworth. It seems Lena Stark was fired for stealing the alien blaster, but we still have further to go yet. Trevor, I'm moving everything to a more secure location. Reset your access code if you lose the holotape. I understand it can seem overly cautious, but we can't take any risks. I think someone has taken an interest in our work. I will let you know as soon as I know more. This lets us create a code that we can use at the Pleasant Valley Cabins, gaining a one-time use code that lets us obtain the TNT Dome Key 2 from a hidden locked safe under the building. Here we can finally find some rounds for our alien blaster along with a skeleton and the same style of cryopod that we get frozen in Fallout 4. There's also a note by the power cells. Initial tests indicate these could very well be of alien origin, potentially our most significant find in a long time. The material inside is complex and destructive, so take care when handling the samples. They weren't the only ones in the region investigating the aliens either. We can find all sorts of different creatures that the Enclave was studying, including a Scorched Mothman. In room Z05 we can find several dead Zetans, and a nearby terminal only says that the data was redacted, and to destroy them immediately. Seems the Enclave did something they shouldn't have here. Maybe the Zetans managed to get a distress call off? Which brings us to the limited time event Invaders from Beyond. Across the map, Zetan patrols began to spawn, and on the hour, an invasion at one of 6 locations take place. Upon entering one of these locations, Homer Saperstein will contact the player and ask them to help fight off the Zetan invasion. This involves fighting off waves of Zetans, fighting a commander, and destroying a brainwave siphon 3 times. There is a lot going on with this, so we'll just start with General Zeta, the third and final commander that you need to defeat. He doesn't look like a typical Zetan, larger and more human, though he could be similar to the Flatwoods monster and just be inside some kind of mech suit. There's a couple other theories we can look at just from his appearance though. To start with, Fallout 76 takes place only 25 years after the bombs dropped, and we know for a fact that the aliens were abducting humans before this period. Maybe the project to create abominations had been ongoing. Before the war, radiation wasn't as rampant and neither was FEVs, so they had purer samples, similar to why the Institute needed a human from before the war to create their next generation of synths. General Zeta could just be one of the last remaining human Zetan hybrids, before they started running into the abomination wall with the tainted humans. The other theory requires some more legwork and a lucky encounter with a man in black. The Emissary is a rare encounter you can have across the map while the event is ongoing. Similar to the Smiling Man, he looks human enough, but his interactions aren't normal. He talks about other worlds and the stars aligning, bringing humanity into a new golden era. He even mentions the guide stones, saying they seem otherworldly, and that he has a friend to meet there. He specifically says our friend, and it could be the Smiling Man, our other wandering humanoid extraterrestrial, or it could be something to do with Homer Saperstein. The Emissary is a reference to the Men in Black, who were said to go around after UFO sightings and harass witnesses. They were said to be uncanny, seeming off to the people they spoke to. In UFO lore, they're meant to be aliens masquerading as humans, which could explain how odd the Emissary is, and also his name. Who is he the Emissary of? There aren't many governments left for him to be a diplomatic representative. One of his lines is a bit telling in this context.
What planet do we have to invade to get a decent slice of pizza?
Sounds like he's used to traveling between different worlds, and given the state of society, I can believe that it is difficult to get some good pizza on Earth right now. If you kill the Emissary or happen to find his corpse after the Zetans have found and disposed of him, he has a chance of having a mysterious key on his body, which will lead us to Homer. You can find Homer, or at least his designed likeness as he calls it, in TNT Dome number 8, where he is on a large screen. Apparently, he spends most of his time working here, but he isn't very good at social interactions, so when someone gets close, he retreats to his own bunker. He asks the player about the aliens, wanting to know how they feel towards them, and if responded to with violence will call it alarming, but is puzzled if the player instead shows empathy. He also consistently mentions things about his understanding of humanity growing every day and says his designation is Homer Saperstein. He can even understand the alien language to a degree, stating simply that they're here for research, determining what to do with our planet. A lot of his voice lines really seem to indicate that he's actually studying humanity and determining our worth from our reactions to the alien threat. And when you consider the Emissary had the keys to this location and his name, Homer Saperstein, Homo sapien, Homo Saperstein, it really seems like he may be an alien studying us. Especially when you consider the aliens we defeat during the event drop mostly circuitry and antiseptic. It could just be an army of robots he's using to either test or train humanity for the Zetan threat, which could also explain General Zeta. He just made him that way because that's what he thought humans would expect from an alien commander. Though he does actually at one point seem sad at the amount of slain Zetan soldiers. He saw them as expendable in the name of science. As he interacts more with humans, he wonders if maybe the research should be done in another way. Either way, things from other worlds seem to be studying humanity and deciding whether to get rid of us. We've talked about a few different alien races interested in Earth by this point, but there is potentially the body of one we can find in the deep. Tucked away in a hidden chamber surrounded by glowing plants, we can find the visitor curled up into itself, its body emitting some kind of black particles. And within the deep we can find the holotape, President's Eyes Only, which may give us some clues.
This here is James Addison of the White Spring Resort staff. I tell you, they never thought I would tell them the truth, but I found it. I swear by all that is holy, I found it. I knew it was there all along. See, it started with the rumbling. We had some minor earthquakes. You heard me right. Earthquakes of all things in this neck of the woods. I knew something was right. I was gonna prove them all wrong. All the other people at the resort just laughing at me. Well, who's laughing now? I just discovered underground spaceship and the rocket fuel leaking off of that thing. Hell, it's making even the rocks glow. I gotta tell the president. I gotta tell the president if it's the last thing I do. I'll be an American hero. Get the Medal of Honor, I bet. All right, enough talk. Time to swim back home to glory and to wiping that damn smirk off Robbie's face. James out.
Seems James found a ship down here, and while we don't find one, and he could even be talking about the Chinese facility, the fact that we find this strange creature down here, and in the game files it's called Visitor's Corpse, could mean he was right, and this was another species of alien that has at some point arrived on Earth. Maybe Homer is from this race. Maybe it's the one that sent the message about saving us. It could even be an old god. We did a full breakdown of all the Lovecraftian stuff you can find here. Stephen Scarberry is one of the camp companions you can get in 76. And other than just being obsessed with Mothman, he also drops mentions of other cryptids and false gods he's encountered.
Not yet, but I did see something strange. I saw a light fall from the sky. I hoped for him, but instead found metal, smoke, and debris. Nothing else except for a fuzzy painting of a man in a blue shirt.
That's right, once again the aliens were interacting with a genuine Elvis. It seems like multiple aliens were looking for Elvis, not just the bone aliens from the original Fallout. Maybe there was more to Elvis's story than we thought. And finally, the crashed space station. Munch, the ever-reliable raider who definitely doesn't make things up, does have a note we can read about the Nova Orbital 1. Long before we ever landed a man on the moon, USSA had already launched a top-secret program to create the world's first space station, the Nova Orbital 1. The space race was real, but the true mission was to gather information on the alien spies that infiltrated our planet. The town of Flatwoods had already seen them. We knew they were out there, but we couldn't have a panic on our hands. We didn't know the alien motives, so the public could know nothing. Once the Great War hit, the aliens made their move. They knocked old Nova Orbital right out of the sky, and here she lies. We found her, we rebuilt her, and now she's Outpost Crater 1, the best home in all of Appalachia. Which could be nothing. It is Munch who admittedly lies to spice up history and keeps the younger raiders interested. But on Caleb Fisher's terminal, we can find evidence that may indicate this was true. I'm not sure what sort of work they were doing up on the space station, but I dug into some of the surviving documents. This thing they were building, it's not like anything I've seen before. Is it communications? A weapon? I don't know. There's a lot of missing information. I've decided to call it the Space Beam, for lack of better words. Munch wanted to call it the Angel Piss Project, of course, but I quickly put an end to that. It could be years before I figure it all out, let alone getting it running. If it was for communication, the Zetans have proved to not be a big fan. And if it was a beam weapon, of course they'd want it out of the sky. They didn't want humanity having a method to take down their motherships. So maybe this time Munch isn't stretching this truth as much as he thinks he is. Now that's every little bit of alien lore I could scrounge up. But how then were they the cause of everything? It seems pretty far-fetched that they would go out of their way to nuke us, especially with the power of the weapons that they have, but it's more indirect than that. In the 1960s, Colonel Hartigan was abducted, and according to the official game guide, this was the first known contact with aliens. However, codename Paladine crashed in 1962. They never did recover anything from this crash. There were some things before this point that diverged from our own timeline, like Vicky and Vance, but it wasn't until after the 1960s that technology really started to diverge from our own, eventually leading to the resource shortage and the Great War itself. If you wanted to be really pedantic, given the fact that it is even a possibility that we were created by aliens and that they warned us of the coming nuclear fire, you could lay everything at their feet for creating us and setting us on what seems a pretty predetermined path. Were humanity really just one big science project to them? Maybe the Zetans are test subjects just like us, and it's the Starfather, or one of the potential other alien races that are the real problem. All we really know can be summed up by this Magic the Gathering card. No one knows what the Zetans wanted, but whatever it was, it involved cattle. Thanks for watching. Let me know down below what you think the multiple alien races mean for the future. Did I miss anything? I think I was pretty thorough, but Fallout is incredibly dense and things like to hide. Also, let me know any other mysteries or games you feel deserve a deep dive. And join us over on my Discord where we discuss lore, games, books, movies, you name it, we talk about it. For now though, stay safe in the wasteland, and I'll see you on the next one.